Let me explain, my chair. Let me explain. Please just let me explain for a moment.
Welcome to WatchMojoUK, and today we're counting down our picks for the most obnoxious celebrities getting thoroughly rinsed on Question Time. We're also including politicians.
Ancestors are revolving in their grave.
Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Number 10, Mary Archer.
There were liars, obviously. There was perjurers. We had Jonathan Aitken and Jeffrey. And, you know, that's sleaze.
As he was imprisoned for perjury at the time, ex-Tory MP Jeffrey Archer didn't appear on the panel, but his wife did. In his prime, Jeffrey Archer was a key figure in the Conservative Party throughout the 1980s, before he was convicted.
Anything contentious there?
Like to take another free kick while you're at it?
Well, this is a public programme, and you've appeared on the panel.
This clash came on the heels of the Garbagegate scandal, in which Tony Blair was found to have been making dodgy deals in Romania. Ian Hislop was on hand to compare Garbagegate to the similar scandals of John Major's government, i.e. what Jeffrey Archer had been up to.
And I think you're most famous for being Jeffrey's wife. Your first comment, you mentioned Jeffrey as an orderly in the hope of diffusing the situation, which it won't.
Mary, who herself is well known as a scientist, accepted an invitation onto the show that week and was demolished by Hislop. Number 9, Greg Hands. Back in 2022, the government had finally announced it was going to do something about rising energy bills in the form of a £200 discount that would then need to be paid back to the government via a levy.
The £200 is, of course, a loan.
It's not a loan. It is a discount,
but
which will then be taken back.
Tory Minister Greg Hands appeared on Question Time to discuss this and ended up getting jeered by the audience. The sticking point was whether or not this £200 relief payment constituted a loan.
Taken back at the
point
house. At which it is levied. Yeah,
sorry, you're all shouting something. What are you all shouting?
I'm saying it's a loan.
It's not a loan.
It's a loan. That's what you're hearing from the
audience.
It's
Hands was adamant that it didn't, but he used a very specific definition of a loan, while the audience and Fiona Bruce were quick to call him out on this.
The individual does not have an obligation to repay.
Oh, so we can say we don't want to, if we don't want to pay it back, we don't have to?
No, I'm not saying that. It's taken back.
If people are being asked to pay back a sum of money, what it's called doesn't really matter. Number 8, Yvette Cooper.
The inheritance tax.
Here it comes again.
Well, you know, it is. But
it's the one rhetorical point every Labour spokesman makes every time they're wheeled on.
Another Ian Hislop special. This time he came to blows with senior Labour MP Yvette Cooper about inheritance tax. Inheritance tax is one of the most unpopular modern policies, with many viewing it as a tax on dying, though there is currently a tax-free allowance of up to £325,000.
And are they all very poor, the inheritance tax people that you benefit? They're not, are they? They're quite rich.
But no, actually, that's not true, Ian.
No,
it's not
I think
true.
it probably is.
And the people, I think, you know, the only people.
Labour was still in government at the time, and Hislop echoed the thoughts of the nation when he slammed Cooper for going for the tax, apparently just because George Osborne floated the idea on a different episode of Question Time.
I was here when Osborne announced it on Question Time. He got a big round of applause. All you lot sitting back in Central Office thought, oh, we'd better have one of those, and you brought it in. Why?
As usual, the audience was firmly on Hislop's side. Number 7, Will Quince. Tory Health Minister Will Quince arrived on this special edition of Question Time, exclusively covering NHS funding, with the health service in dire straits.
Let's just look at a graph looking at funding of the NHS. This will be familiar to you in terms of where funding was for the NHS before the Conservative government came into power and where it is now.
Quince was bodied by Fiona Bruce, however, when she brought out a graph showing how catastrophic the Tories' handling of the NHS had become.
As a percentage of an increase, the average increase has been something like 3%, but when you look at that, it's more like 1.6%.
He continually insisted that actually the Tories had committed to spending more on health and social care, even though this clearly wasn't the case. She also asked him about the many strikes, calling him out on how bad the Tories had been at negotiating with the trade unions involved.
So I regularly meet with unions and others, and I know it's not just about salary.
What,
I know
talk
salary.
About
pay?
Number 6, Nick Griffin.
And it's that difference, by the way, the fact that the BNP defines itself on race, which distinguishes it from every other political party I can think of.
One of the most controversial episodes of Question Time ever, in 2007, leader of the BNP, Nick Griffin, was invited onto the panel. We're not sure whether he is a celebrity, but he certainly isn't a politician anymore, and remains an infamous figure from the noughties.
All you're thinking of doing is trying to sort of poison politics. And yes, you are. Poison politics and poison the minds of people in this country.
Immediately, an audience member attacked Griffin for the way the BNP co-opted Churchill's legacy, considering Churchill was, of course, against fascism. Griffin went as far as to say that Churchill wouldn't have been allowed into any party other than the BNP, and then attacked MP Jack Straw for things his father did.
Finally, my father was in the RAF during the Second World War, while Mr. Straw's father was in prison for refusing to fight Adolf Hitler.
He was rightly booed by the audience and called out by David Dimbleby.
Wait a minute, what's that got to do with the issue? What's that got to do with the issue?
Number 5, Joey Barton.
The mainstream political parties are sitting up and taking notice, but all you represent to me as UKIP is the best of a bad bunch.
Ever controversial footballer Joey Barton had a few things to say about UKIP back in 2014. He was trying to say that he thought UKIP were the best option, but instead of saying that, he misogynistically used the metaphor of a group of unattractive women.
If I'm somewhere and there was 4 really ugly girls, I'm thinking, well, she's not the worst, because that's all you are. That's all you are to us. That's all you are.
He was immediately called out by Louise Boers, who was herself an MEP for UKIP at the time. She had a huge problem with Barton's backhanded compliment to her party.
He basically fulfills the mission, doesn't he, that footballers' brains are in their feet? Well, because he's absolutely proved that to me tonight.
Barton apparently hasn't learned his lesson, however, as in recent years he said that women shouldn't be allowed to commentate on men's football, and even Mike Graham and Piers Morgan were against him on that one. Number 4, Izzard and Farage. They've each got plenty of dedicated fans, but put them in a room together and nobody was enjoying themselves.
In my mind, this is the issue that will decide the referendum.
Izzard, who's repeatedly tried to become a Labour MP, clashed with Farage about immigration, of course, in an exchange that drove the audience and other guests up the wall.
The point is, you are from an immigrant family and you're married to an immigrant. Why are you so against immigration when it worked for you?
Because we have to control it. We have to control it.
This was only shortly before the Brexit referendum, so the debate revolved around that, with Farage ranting about how annoyed he was about the old passports. They bickered and ranted, and even the audience got annoyed enough to tell them to be quiet.
All right.
How are we going?
All right, I'm going to...
How are we going to cope?
David Dimbleby then threatened to separate them and put them on other sides of the desk. Number 3, Eric Pickles.
How far are you away from Westminster?
37 miles.
And you need 2 houses.
In 2009, The Telegraph got a hold of unredacted documents relating to MPs' expenses and began to publish them relentlessly. It was the main focus of this episode of Question Time, in which Shadow Minister Eric Pickles was asked about his claims on a second home.
I have never, ever claimed my full allowance. I have always claimed the amount. I publish them. I've always published them on my website.
MPs are expected to have a second home in central London and to claim for it, but Pickles was still living in London at the time. He went on about how difficult the 37-mile commute was for him because he was always required to be in Parliament at certain times of the day, which Dimbleby had a brilliant response to.
I had to be there.
Like a job, in other words.
It was like a
There was simply no wiggle room for Pickles and the other MPs who claimed for absurd things.
Don't you think that's a bit hypocritical?
Okay.
Number 2, Priti Patel. In this classic Question Time moment, we've got another incisive appearance from Ian Hislop, this time debating the death penalty and whether it should be brought back.
And actually, on that basis alone, I would actually support the reintroduction of capital punishment to serve as a deterrent.
As he explains, Private Eye prides itself on exposing miscarriages of justice, in which innocent people were wrongly sent to prison. He says that the existence of these miscarriages alone is enough to make him staunchly opposed to the death penalty, as the risk of wrongfully executing someone is too great.
Over the years, large numbers of these cases have been found to be entirely wrong, and the men convicted
almost always men, there's a couple of women, have been found innocent.
When Priti Patel came back saying that capital punishment was a necessary deterrent, he had a legendary response.
It's not a deterrent killing the wrong people.
Well, no, capital punishment would act as a deterrent.
Number 1. Lawrence Fox. In many ways, this was the first domino that fell in Lawrence Fox's spiral into madness, which has resulted in a failed bid to become the Mayor of London and then getting arrested for conspiracy to commit vandalism.
Well, you know, can we have the cottage back and your HRHs?
This debate revolved around the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, who'd only just announced their intention to leave the royal family behind. Fox was asked for his opinions, which included saying that they should pay back the money for renovating Frogmore Cottage, which they did, incidentally.
Let's be really clear about what this is. Let's call it by its name. It's racism. She's a black woman, and she has been torn to pieces.
And then he denied what an audience member said about the anti-Meghan press coverage being thinly veiled racism, causing a media frenzy.
We're the most tolerant, lovely country in Europe. Let's celebrate our women. It's so easy to throw the charge of racism at everybody, and it's really starting to get boring.
Let us know in the comments which Question Time guests you like the most.
He says, look at all the Tories there in jail. Your husband is the reason that Tony Blair gets away with it in Parliament.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojoUK and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.